You're a disgrace, Dad. You've embarrassed our family enough. The words stabbed sharper than the carving knife in my hand, spoken by my daughter-in-law, Lisa, at the table of our small-town diner in Springfield, Illinois. My son, Brandon, looked uneasy, glancing down at his plate as if the words were mine to endure alone. I froze, the smell of frying bacon and brewed coffee suddenly thick in my nostrils, and the low murmur of other diners felt like a spotlight on my humiliation. Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe. And tell us where you're watching from. My name is David Lawson. I've spent decades building a modest but respected life in Springfield, raising my son, running the family's small auto repair shop, and quietly ensuring that Brandon and Lisa wanted for nothing. I never missed a recital, a game, or a milestone. I worked long hours to pay the mortgage, save for college, and keep the family afloat. And now, at a table in a diner I've frequented for years, my own daughter-in-law called me a disgrace in front of strangers. It wasn't just an insult. It was a betrayal, a dismissal of everything I'd sacrificed for their comfort, their opportunities, their lives. I swallowed my anger and forced a calm smile. "Lisa," I said quietly, "I've spent a lifetime trying to support this family. If I've embarrassed anyone, it's because I care too much, not too little. But I'm listening." "Go on," she crossed her arms, glaring. "You don't understand, Dad. You're old-fashioned, loud, and out of touch. My parents think you're ridiculous, and frankly, so do I. You've made them uncomfortable more than once." Brandon shifted uncomfortably, trying to intervene. "Mom, Lisa, it's not like that." I held up a hand. "No, Brandon. Let her speak." Later that day, I walked through the quiet streets of Springfield, the crisp smell of autumn leaves filling my lungs. The diner incident burned in my chest, but the words weren't just about Lisa. They were a reflection of the arrogance and entitlement that had begun creeping into my family. They assumed respect and wealth were automatic. They believed my sacrifices were invisible, that I could be dismissed without consequence. I knew then that the situation had to be addressed, not with anger, but with strategy, a plan to show them, publicly, that actions and respect matter far more than words and assumptions. The idea began forming slowly, like gears in an engine, turning with precision. If they wanted to humiliate me, I would return the favor in a way they could never anticipate. Calm, methodical, undeniable. By the following week, I had begun quietly gathering information, contacts from their social circle, events they were planning, and the subtle financial habits Lisa prided herself on. Everything I collected would be used not to destroy them, but to expose their hypocrisy in a setting where the town, their friends, and family could see it all clearly. I even reached out to Harold, my accountant and longtime friend. "I need a full picture of their finances, public appearances, and social connections," I said. "Not for revenge, just to show the truth when the time comes." Harold raised an eyebrow. "You're serious? You're going to turn the tables?" I nodded slowly. "They expect me to sit quietly while they ridicule me. That ends now. If they want embarrassment, they'll get a taste of it. But it will be measured, public and undeniable." As I drove home, the sun dipping behind the horizon, the streets of Springfield glowing in the amber light, I felt a rare thrill, a mix of anticipation and vindication. Brandon and Lisa had believed they could humiliate me in front of strangers, flaunting their sense of superiority. Soon, the entire town would see what happens when arrogance meets preparation and patience. I had been patient long enough. Now, it was time for the public reckoning. The moment when respect, dignity, and accountability would all come crashing down in front of everyone who had ever witnessed their prideful behavior. And Lisa, she would realize, in the most dramatic way possible, that embarrassment is a two-way street. The following Saturday, Springfield was buzzing with the usual weekend chatter. kids laughing in the park, the smell of fresh bread wafting from the bakery, and the distant hum of cars along Main Street. I parked my truck outside the community hall, where the local charity gala was set to take place. Brandon and Lisa were attending, eager to impress Lisa's parents, and the small circle of socialites who considered themselves Springfield's elite. Lisa had been boasting all week, dropping hints about her family's connections and subtly reminding everyone that I was the old man from the repair shop, a label meant to humiliate, to diminish me in front of the town. She didn't know that I had been quietly turning the situation into an opportunity. I entered the hall with calm precision, greeting a few familiar faces, neighbors who had always respected me, clients who knew my work ethic, and even a few distant relatives who had grown weary of Lisa's condescending attitude. I carried nothing but a small folder, innocuous enough, yet containing the key to turning the tables. Brandon spotted me and walked over, awkwardly tugging at his tie. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "This isn't your crowd," I smiled faintly. "I'm here to observe, Brandon. And perhaps to offer a little clarity." Lisa rolled her eyes as she noticed me. "Oh, wonderful. You actually came. This is going to be so embarrassing. For you?" I remained composed, letting her arrogance bounce off me like water off steel. Every detail mattered. The seating arrangement, the guest list, the timing of the speeches, even the way the hors d'oeuvres were served. I had ensured that everyone in attendance would see, clearly, the contrast between a man who built his life through hard work and integrity and a woman who relied on entitlement and inherited pride to feel superior. Midway through the gala, as the speeches began, I discreetly handed my folder to the event coordinator. Within minutes, a subtle but unmistakable shift occurred. The slideshow of community achievements included photographs of Lisa's family's public faux pas, the very moments she had hoped to keep private. A few quiet whispers began circulating. Guests exchanged glances, some laughing politely, others raising eyebrows in disbelief. Lisa froze, noticing the murmurs. What is this?" I stepped forward, voice calm but loud enough for the room to hear. "Lisa, I believe everyone deserves to see the full picture. Pride and entitlement are easy to flaunt, but accountability, that is revealed over time. Perhaps now, everyone can understand the difference between appearances and reality." Brandon's face turned crimson. "Dad, please, this isn't necessary." "Don't," I held up a hand. "No, Brandon. It's necessary. They tried to embarrass me in front of this community. Now it's time for them to learn a lesson about humility." The photos on the screen captured every small mistake, every instance of Lisa's overconfidence, and a few embarrassing moments from her parents' social events, carefully sourced from public records and local news archives. The crowd's attention shifted fully to Lisa and her family. Gasps, murmurs, and polite chuckles filled the hall. Lisa's jaw dropped. You can't do this." I smiled faintly. "I can," and I did. By the end of the evening, the embarrassment was palpable. Lisa's parents whispered furiously, trying to smooth things over, while guests discreetly congratulated me on my composure and cleverness. Brandon stayed quiet, staring at the floor, realizing that his mother's pride and their family's sense of superiority had been publicly dismantled without a single raised voice from me. Walking home later that night, the cool air smelled of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke. I reflected on the evening, not with malice, but with satisfaction. The lesson had been delivered. Publicly, calmly, undeniably. Lisa had expected to humiliate me, but in the end, she had been the one exposed. Her sense of entitlement laid bare for everyone to see. And for the first time, Brandon seemed to understand that respect is earned, not demanded. But I knew this was only the beginning. Lisa would not accept this quietly. She would try to retaliate. And Brandon, well, he might be torn between loyalty to his mother and the truth he could no longer ignore. And I had to be ready. The morning after the gala, Springfield felt different, quiet, almost reverent. Word of Lisa's public embarrassment had spread through the town faster than I anticipated. I stopped by the shop early, the familiar scent of oil and grease grounding me, as Harold, my accountant and longtime friend, shuffled through some papers at the counter. "David," he said, adjusting his glasses, "the story from last night is all over town. People are talking. Clients are impressed with how you handled it, and the local papers are starting to pick up on it. Lisa and her parents? They're furious, but they can't argue against the facts." I nodded slowly, sipping my black coffee. "Facts speak louder than temper, Harold. They assumed arrogance and entitlement would carry them, but truth always has weight." But I knew this wasn't enough. Lisa wouldn't accept humiliation quietly, and Brandon had to fully understand the consequences of standing silent, while deceit and arrogance ran unchecked. I began meticulously planning the next steps, ensuring every misstep from Lisa's family would be visible, every claim they made could be verified, and every effort to manipulate the town's social circles would be documented. I started with subtle investigations into their social events, their charitable contributions, and even their minor financial mismanagements. I contacted old acquaintances, neighbors, and colleagues who had quietly observed Lisa's family over the years. Every small piece of information would soon form a complete picture, a public revelation impossible to ignore. By midweek, I arranged a small gathering at the town hall under the guise of a community meeting about the new Springfield Park renovations. Lisa and her family were invited, of course, eager to flaunt their social standing. Brandon hesitated but eventually accompanied them, likely sensing the storm his mother was about to face. I arrived early, organizing every detail with precision. Seating, handouts, and even a subtle slideshow on the projector that appeared to be about the park but contained carefully curated facts about transparency, responsibility, and accountability. As the meeting began, Lisa attempted her usual charm and condescension, greeting attendees with an overdone smile. "I just want to ensure Springfield understands my family's contributions," she said, voice dripping with superiority. I stepped forward calmly. "Thank you, Lisa. And I believe it's only fair that Springfield sees the full picture of accountability and integrity, values that benefit everyone, not just the loudest voices in the room." The projector lit up, displaying clear examples of mismanaged funds from minor community events Lisa's family had overseen, along with indisputable public records of missteps and oversights. The murmurs started almost immediately, the audience whispering in shock as Lisa's confident composure began to crack. Brandon's eyes widened. "Mom, this isn't— You can't—" I smiled gently. "Brandon, let them see for themselves. You wanted public embarrassment? Let's ensure it's both accurate and instructive," Lisa stammered, her face flushing. "You can't— This is private. These are mistakes that everyone makes." I shook my head slowly. "Yes, everyone makes mistakes, Lisa. But honesty and accountability separate those who grow from those who cling to entitlement. Tonight, Springfield will see the difference." By the end of the meeting, the lesson was clear. Lisa's family had been exposed not with malice, but with calm precision. The room understood who had acted with integrity and who had relied solely on assumed social power. Brandon finally turned to me, his expression a mix of awe and newfound respect. "Dad, I didn't realize— they've been unfair, but I didn't see how badly until now." I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Now you see, true respect is earned, not demanded. And when entitlement meets transparency, the truth always prevails." As the crowd dispersed, Lisa's mother whispered furiously to her daughter, frustration and humiliation plain on their faces. I walked out into the crisp Springfield night, feeling the weight of victory settle calmly in my chest. But I knew Lisa wouldn't stop. She would try again. And next time, I needed to ensure the lesson was complete, public, undeniable, and permanent. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon in Springfield, the kind of day where the sun hits just right and the leaves on the maples glow like fire. The town had gathered at the annual Fall Harvest Festival, a tradition I'd watched grow over decades. This year, Lisa and her family were scheduled to make a public speech, another opportunity for them to flaunt their influence and superiority. I arrived early, blending into the crowd with calm precision, carrying nothing but a small envelope and a quiet determination. The festival grounds were alive with laughter, children darting between pumpkin displays, and the smell of roasted nuts and cinnamon filling the air. Lisa, in her tailored fall coat and perfectly coiffed hair, strutted to the podium with her usual air of superiority. Her parents flanked her, smiling stiffly at the crowd. Brandon trailed behind, uneasy, sensing the tension but unsure of how to intervene. "Good afternoon, Springfield," Lisa began, her voice carrying over the microphone. "My family and I are proud to support this community and contribute to its ongoing success." I stepped forward calmly, approaching the event organizer. "May I have a moment?" I asked. With a polite nod, they handed me the microphone. The crowd quieted, curious. I cleared my throat, my voice steady. "I'd like to add a few words. Springfield, you all know me, David Lawson. I've spent decades contributing quietly, maintaining integrity, and supporting not just my family, but this community." Lisa's eyes narrowed, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Dad, I held up a hand, never raising my voice. "Please, let me continue. You see, last week, I documented every claim of contribution made by Lisa's family. Financial oversights, mismanaged events, and repeated attempts to manipulate social perception for personal gain." The crowd murmured. Phones clicked. Neighbors whispered. Lisa's parents shifted uncomfortably, and Brandon's face paled. I handed the envelope to the organizer. Inside were clear records, screenshots, and receipts, presented politely but undeniably. A few volunteers displayed them on a table where the public could see. Gasps spread through the crowd. Friends of Lisa's family looked on in disbelief. Lisa's voice trembled. "You can't do this. These are private matters." I smiled gently. "They are public records, Lisa, and this community deserves transparency. You tried to humiliate me at a diner, flaunt superiority at social gatherings, and portray entitlement as achievement. Today, the truth is clear." The crowd watched as Lisa's carefully curated image collapsed. Children who had grown up seeing her family as untouchable socialites now whispered about the very human mistakes she had tried to conceal. Neighbors nodded at me, some quietly applauding. Brandon finally stepped forward, a mix of shame and understanding on his face. "Mom, Dad, I didn't realize," he stammered. I put a hand on his shoulder, voice calm but firm. "Brandon, respect and responsibility are never optional. You learn it, or you suffer the consequences. Today, the consequences are visible." Lisa's mother tried to interject, but her voice faltered under the weight of evidence and public scrutiny. Her pride, once untouchable, had crumbled. By the end of the festival, the lesson had been delivered, calmly, publicly, and undeniably. Lisa and her family had been embarrassed not with rage, but with undeniable truth, exposing arrogance and entitlement to everyone who had ever witnessed it. I walked home as the sun set over Springfield, the scent of autumn leaves in the air. Peace settled in my chest. The revenge had been executed perfectly, not maliciously, but with justice, dignity, and precision. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the heavy weight of betrayal lift. Lisa had tried to humiliate me. Instead, she had been shown the cost of arrogance in front of the entire town. The week after the festival, Springfield seemed quieter, almost reflective. The whispers about Lisa's public humiliation circulated through the town, but they weren't cruel. They were lessons. People admired the way the situation had been handled. Calmly, strategically, without unnecessary confrontation. Brandon finally approached me one evening as I closed up the shop. The sun was dipping behind the industrial skyline, casting long shadows over the familiar grease-stained floors. "Dad," he began, hesitating. I understand now. I was blind, and I let Mom's pride cloud my judgment. "I see what you did, and why." I placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and reassuring. "Brandon, the goal wasn't revenge. It was accountability. They needed to see that entitlement and arrogance come with consequences. And you needed to witness that truth for yourself." Lisa avoided me in the days that followed. Her parents quietly apologized, humbled by the exposure of their actions. Brandon, however, started helping around the shop, learning what I had spent decades building. Not just the repair work, but the values, hard work, respect, and integrity. The town gradually returned to normal. Clients continued to come in, some jokingly asking if I'd teach any more lessons, while others expressed quiet admiration. Springfield had witnessed the difference between arrogance and earned respect, and it was a lesson that would linger in their minds for years. Autumn deepened, leaves crunching underfoot as I walked through the driveway of the Lawson family home. The air smelled of wood smoke and damp earth, and the distant hum of traffic reminded me that life was moving forward. I thought of the diner, the gala, the festival, the stages where pride had clashed with truth, and I felt a rare sense of peace. I thought of the words Lisa had spoken, meant to wound. "You've embarrassed our family enough." Now, the embarrassment had been redirected. Carefully measured and public, but it wasn't cruel. It was justice. It was a reminder that respect is earned, not demanded, and that integrity matters far more than appearances. Brandon joined me in the backyard, carrying a toolbox from the shop. "Dad, I want to learn, not just about cars, but about this. Life stuff. About responsibility. About standing up when it matters." I smiled, ruffling his hair. "Good. That's the most important lesson, son. Everything else, money, social status, pride, it fades. What remains is character. And that's something no one can take from you." Lisa eventually approached, quietly, her arrogance replaced by cautious humility. "David, I misjudged you. I see now how wrong I was." I nodded. "Acknowledgement is the first step. Actions will follow, if you choose them wisely." Springfield resumed its gentle rhythm. The festival continued annually, and the diner still smelled of bacon and coffee. But something had shifted. Respect for truth, earned through patience and integrity, had replaced arrogance and entitlement. I walked into the shop one final time that day, closing the door with a sense of satisfaction. The trucks, the tools, the clients, they were all reminders of a life built with care, patience, and honesty. My dignity was intact. My family, though chastened, had learned lessons they would never forget. And for the first time in a long while, I could breathe, knowing that justice had been served. Not with malice, but with precision, integrity, and the quiet power of truth. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories.